The house was warm and bright that Christmas evening. Soft music played in the background, and the smell of roasted chicken filled the air. I had spent the whole morning wrapping presents for my children, hoping this holiday would bring us closer again. Even though things had been tense for months, I still believed a simple family dinner could calm every storm. I arrived early, helped set up the table, and waited for everyone to settle. But the moment we all sat down, I felt something shift in the room. Lionel, my eldest son, kept tapping his fingers on the table. His eyes moved from me to Caleb, and then to Naomi, as if he was checking whether they were ready for something. Caleb looked nervous, and Naomi kept staring at her plate, pushing her food around. Their strange behavior made my stomach tighten, but I chose to stay quiet. I did not want to ruin Christmas with questions. I tried to start light conversation. I asked Caleb about his new job, and I asked Naomi about her school project. They answered in short sentences with forced smiles. Lionel didn't speak at all. He only watched me, and every few minutes, he leaned back in his chair, like someone waiting for the right moment to strike. When everyone finished the first round of food, Lionel suddenly stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor, making everyone jump. He placed his hands on the table and said with a cold voice, "We voted, and you are no longer a member of our family." Caleb's fork slipped from his hand. Naomi whispered, "Lionel, stop." But Lionel didn't even look at them. His eyes were locked on me, waiting for my reaction. For a second, I felt the room sink. The decorations above us, the bright lights, the Christmas tree, everything felt far away. My own son had just told me I was no longer part of the family I raised alone. But I did not shout, I did not stand, I did not argue. Instead, I reached calmly into my bag and pulled out a simple brown folder. I slid it across the table until it stopped in front of Lionel. "Here's a parting gift for you," I said. He frowned, grabbed the folder quickly, and opened it without hesitation. As soon as his eyes moved across the first page, his face changed. All the confidence drained from it. His jaw tensed. His hands shook. Then he started screaming. It was not a scream of anger. It was a scream of shock. Pure, sharp, and loud enough to make Caleb push back from the table. Naomi covered her mouth with both hands. The room that had been full of Christmas warmth only moments ago now felt cold and broken. I sat still, watching the storm unfold. I didn't raise my voice or move a muscle. I had already lived through years of quiet pain. One more moment of chaos would not shake me. As Lionel's scream echoed through the room, everyone looked at me, waiting to understand what he had seen. And I simply lowered my eyes to my plate, breathing slowly, letting the truth settle around us, like falling snow. Before we continue, please comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting revenge stories. For many years after my wife passed away, I tried my best to hold the family together. I worked long hours, cooked when I could, and never missed any school events. My children were young then, and they stayed close to me because they had no one else to depend on. But as they grew older, things slowly changed, especially with Lionel. He became stronger in his opinions and louder in his voice, taking the role of a leader among the siblings without anyone asking him to. At first, I thought it was just confidence. I wanted him to feel responsible and capable. But soon, I noticed he began making decisions for everyone, even in small things. He decided which family events we should attend, how money should be managed, and even how Caleb and Naomi should behave in certain situations. Sometimes I stepped in gently and reminded him that I was still their father, but he always responded with the same cold sentence: "You don't understand what we need." Each time he said that, the distance between us grew wider. Caleb was different. He had a good heart and always tried to keep peace in the family. When he saw Lionel and me argue, He tried to soften the situation, but Lionel had a strong way of speaking that made Caleb quiet down, even when he disagreed. With time, Caleb learned to follow Lionel's lead to avoid being pushed aside. Naomi, the youngest, observed everything quietly. She often sat with me when the boys were out, and she would ask gentle questions about the past. She remembered how her mother used to bring the family together. She missed those days, and so did I, but she didn't know how to fix what was breaking. The real shift began when we had to talk about the family house. I had always planned to keep it safe for all my children. It held memories of their mother, memories I wanted them to carry forward. But Lionel wanted something else. He believed the house should be used as a family investment, which meant renting parts of it or making changes that would erase everything their mother had built. When I calmly said no, he became furious. He accused me of being selfish and old-fashioned. He even told Caleb and Naomi that I was holding them back from their future. Naomi looked confused, and Caleb didn't know where to stand, but neither of them wanted to argue with Lionel. That day, I felt something inside our home break quietly. From then on, Lionel began talking to his siblings in whispers. Whenever I walked into a room, their conversations ended quickly or changed suddenly. At dinner, Lionel would speak for all of them, answering questions I did not ask him. If I offered help, he refused. If I gave advice, he dismissed it. I still tried to keep peace. I invited them for meals, gave them small gifts, and checked on them often. But the warmth we once had faded a little more each week. By the time Christmas came, I could feel a wall around them, tall, cold, and built slowly over time. I didn't know what Lionel was planning, but I felt the weight of something coming. My heart hoped for healing, yet my mind sensed a storm. Now, sitting at the dinner table on Christmas night, watching the shock spread across their faces, I finally understood how far we had drifted. After the changes in my children, I tried to stay patient, but the distance between us only grew. I began noticing things that I had ignored before. When I visited their homes, conversations stopped the moment I stepped inside. If I walked into the living room, phones were quickly turned over or placed face down. At first, I thought they were planning a surprise or trying to protect me from stress, but with time, the truth became clearer. Lionel had taken a strong hold on his siblings. He often spoke to them in quiet tones, sharing ideas about building a new life without depending on me. Sometimes I heard my own name spoken with frustration behind closed doors. Other times, when I offered support, Lionel refused on their behalf before they could even answer. His voice became the loudest in the house, and Caleb and Naomi learned to follow it. I didn't want to cause trouble, so I watched silently. I remembered their younger days when they ran through the halls laughing, chasing each other with toys, and asking me endless questions. The memory of those times made the present feel heavier. I wondered how I had lost them so quickly, or if I had failed to guide them well after their mother passed. Those thoughts stayed with me every night. One evening after a small family meeting, I walked past the hallway and heard Lionel speaking to Caleb in a firm tone. He said, "He is old now. He should not control anything anymore." Caleb did not argue. He only sighed and said he didn't want fights. Lionel told him that some decisions were already made. That sentence stayed in my mind for days. Soon after, Naomi visited me alone. She looked uncomfortable, almost frightened to speak. She didn't explain everything, but she told me softly, "Dad, please be wise. Things are not as simple as before." I could see worry in her eyes, the kind children show when they want to protect you but don't know how. She left quickly after that, leaving me with more questions than answers. It was around this time that I decided to prepare a folder. I didn't do it out of anger or revenge. I did it because I needed to protect the things that mattered: the family house, my savings, and the rights I still had as their father. I had all the documents stored safely for years, but I had never imagined I would someday use them in a moment like this. I took my time choosing each paper and placing them neatly inside. There were legal documents, financial papers, and information about decisions Lionel assumed he had control over. As I closed the folder, I felt both sadness and strength. I wished I didn't need it, but I understood that the situation was moving in a direction I could not ignore. Walking through the house after preparing the folder, I looked at old photographs on the wall. Some showed my children smiling beside their mother, some showed birthdays, and some showed simple days at the park. Each picture reminded me that love had once been strong between us. I didn't feel hate toward any of them. I only felt the weight of what had been lost. As Christmas approached, the air in the family grew heavier. Whispered plans continued. Lionel's confidence increased. Caleb grew quieter. Naomi seemed trapped between her love for her brothers and her fear of hurting me. I kept the folder close, knowing the time to use it was getting nearer. Though I did not know what the holiday would bring, I prepared myself for whatever truth awaited. Christmas morning arrived quietly. The sun shone softly through the curtains, and the house smelled like cinnamon and roasted chicken. I had already prepared the table, set out the plates, and arranged the gifts. I hoped the day would be calm, even if things between my children had become tense in the past months. Lionel arrived first. His steps were deliberate, and he walked into the living room with the kind of confidence that left no room for questions. He carried a small gift but didn't smile. Caleb followed him, looking anxious and unsure, holding a plate of cookies he had baked that morning. Naomi came last, wearing a simple red dress. Her eyes flickered nervously between her brothers and me. The room felt strange. Everyone seemed to be performing for someone else rather than enjoying the holiday. I tried to start small talk. "Who wants some hot cocoa before dinner?" I asked. Caleb nodded quickly. Naomi gave a small smile. Lionel barely acknowledged my question. We moved to the table, and I noticed the small cracks forming in our interactions. Lionel placed his napkin precisely in front of him, as if preparing for a formal event. Caleb fidgeted, looking at me for guidance. Naomi tried to make conversation, asking about my day, but Lionel interrupted with sharp comments about the food and decorations. I didn't respond. I had learned that arguing with Lionel only escalated the tension. Instead, I continued with my tasks quietly, pouring drinks, arranging plates, and placing the gifts at the center of the table. I tried to remind myself that peace sometimes comes through patience, not confrontation. When dinner started, Lionel's behavior grew more controlling. He told Caleb where to sit. He told Naomi what she could eat first. I watched silently, remembering a time when they had been polite and kind. It was painful, but I kept my voice calm, my hands steady, and my mind focused. I handed each of them small gifts, carefully chosen to show thought and care. Caleb smiled softly when he opened his gift. Naomi's eyes filled with a gentle warmth, but Lionel barely acknowledged his. He unwrapped his present quickly and placed it aside without a word. I knew in that moment that something larger was about to happen. I could feel the tension rising, like the quiet before a storm. Lionel's eyes shifted toward me more than once, and I could sense his growing impatience. Caleb seemed frozen, unsure of how to react. Naomi's fingers twitched nervously as she tried to keep the conversation light. All of these small moments, the quiet tension, the hidden words, and the forced smiles, were leading to the event I had already prepared for. I kept the folder close, my hand resting lightly on it, knowing that the time to act was near. For the first time in months, I felt a strange mix of calm and strength. I had done what I could to protect the family and myself. Now, all that remained was to face the moment that Lionel had unknowingly invited. Dinner continued in uneasy silence, each bite heavier than the last. And I quietly reminded myself that sometimes the truth is the only way to restore balance. The moment had come. Lionel, growing impatient with the quiet tension, finally reached for the folder I'd placed in front of him earlier. He opened it roughly, flipping through the pages without understanding what he was holding. His face changed almost immediately. The confidence he had carried for months, the certainty that he could control the family, vanished in seconds. The folder contained documents showing that the house, which he had always assumed he had influence over, was entirely under my authority. It showed bank statements proving that the savings Lionel thought he could access were securely under my name. Every decision he had argued about, every plan he believed he could enforce, was actually already decided legally and financially. As he read, his eyes widened. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to process the truth. I remained calm, watching the realization settle over him. Caleb shifted uncomfortably in his chair, finally understanding why Lionel had been acting so aggressively all these months. Naomi's face turned pale, and she covered her mouth with her hands, unable to speak. Lionel's scream pierced the room, a mixture of shock, fear, and frustration. It was loud enough to make Caleb flinch and Naomi hold onto her chair. For the first time, he had no words to control the situation. He tried to argue, tried to claim that the documents didn't matter, but the truth was undeniable. Everything he assumed about power and control in the family was based on illusions. I spoke softly, my voice steady. Lionel, I never wanted to hurt you. I only wanted to protect what matters to all of us. The house, the savings, the choices. They were never meant to be taken away from anyone. But respect and honesty are required in a family. You forgot that. Caleb finally spoke, his voice shaking but clear. Dad, we didn't know. We didn't understand. He looked at Lionel, who could not meet anyone's eyes. Naomi nodded silently, tears gathering in her eyes. Lionel slumped back in his chair, speechless. His anger and pride had evaporated, replaced by a bitter recognition of mistakes and a long journey he would have to make to earn trust back. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I simply let the truth speak for itself. The room was quiet now, heavy with understanding. The air was still, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I looked at my children and felt both sadness and relief. Sadness for the months lost. Relief that honesty had finally reached them. I did not yell. I did not punish. I only waited, letting the moments sink in, letting them see the consequences of their actions. Sometimes family lessons are not learned with anger, but with clarity. As the evening went on, Lionel sat quietly. Caleb tried to comfort him, and Naomi finally allowed herself to breathe again. I realized that, though the past could not be changed, the future could begin again, with respect, understanding, and the truth firmly in place. That Christmas, the family would never forget the lesson of the folder. And I knew in my heart that honesty and patience had finally restored the balance we had lost for so long. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting revenge stories.